In the dead of night, without warning, a nation struck back. No guns. No armies. Just one signature. And with it, two of the largest gold mines in West Africa vanished from foreign control. Burkina Faso didn't ask. It took. For too long, Africa's veins have pumped riches into the heart of Europe, while our children walked barefoot to dry wells. For too long, we've watched gold leave our soil in crates, only to return as debt. But this time, something snapped. A storm rose from the Sahel, not of sand, but of resistance. A 37-year-old soldier, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, stood before his people and before the world, and he did what no African leader dared in decades: he seized back what was stolen. No negotiations. No permission. Just power. Overnight, France's golden pipeline shattered. Diplomats scrambled. Markets shook. Because the message was clear: Africa is not your colony. Not your mine. Not your silent partner. Not anymore. This is not just about Burkina Faso. It's about every nation that ever bent the knee. It's about shaking the bones of history until justice falls out. So stay right here and drop a comment below. Africa rise. Subscribe now, because what comes next, they will never show you on the news. For over a century, the gold beneath Burkina Faso has gleamed not for its people but for foreign masters. What once lay deep in sacred soil became spoils for colonizers. What was once wealth for generations became the engine of another nation's luxury. And what was once a homeland became a hunting ground for empires. France arrived not with friendship, but with shackles; not with opportunity, but with conquest. In 1896, they seized Upper Volta, a land rich in gold, cotton, and pride. They drew lines on maps, erased names, and dug into the earth not to nourish Africa but to fatten Europe. Every ounce of gold carted off to Paris came with a cost measured in blood and silence. When the colonial flags came down in 1960, the looting didn't stop. It simply evolved. France traded guns for pens, generals for executives, soldiers for shareholders. In the place of soldiers came multinationals like Orano, cloaked in legality, but armed with the same hunger. Through economic agreements, technical partnerships, and development plans, they siphoned Burkina Faso's gold through pipelines of legal theft. In 2024 alone, Burkina Faso produced over 60 tons of gold, valued at more than $4 billion. And yet, drive through Ouagadougou and ask, where are the gold-paved roads? Where are the hospitals, the schools, the safe water, the electricity? You won't find them because most of that gold didn't stay. It went to Paris, to London, to Zurich. Foreign corporations took up to 75% or even 80% of the profit, leaving crumbs for the very people whose land was ripped open. They dug and extracted and exported, but what did they leave behind? Contaminated rivers, broken communities, shattered dreams. In the shadow of these mines, children play barefoot. Mothers cook over coal stoves. Schools lack chalk. Clinics lack medicine. But far away, shareholders sip champagne, their portfolios fattened by African minerals. This is not partnership. This is pillage with paperwork. This is not trade. This is tribute demanded under the guise of contracts. And make no mistake, it was never just gold. Burkina Faso's land has been rich in manganese, phosphate, copper, and oil. But gold is symbolic. Gold is sacred. Gold is power. And that's why they wanted it most. Do you know what they said? They said Africans could not govern themselves. That we were too corrupt, too uneducated, too unstable. But if that were true, why were they so desperate to hold on to our resources? Why build empires off our gold if we were so worthless? Because deep down, they knew and feared what would happen if Africa woke up. And now we have. For generations, our people whispered the names of revolutionaries: Sankara, Lumumba, Nkrumah. We told their stories in secret. We prayed for leaders who would rise, who would say, enough. No more stolen gold. No more smiling exploitation. No more lies dressed as diplomacy. And when the call came, we answered. So before you judge Burkina Faso, ask yourself this: why has the world profited from our wealth, while we remained in poverty? Why do Western companies still control African mines in 2025? Why do African children still die of hunger while gold glistens under their feet? This is not a mystery. It is a system. A system built on silence, and sustained by submission. But that silence has now been broken. The people of Burkina Faso are standing. Not with begging bowls, but with clenched fists and open eyes. We are no longer the colony. We are the storm. Speaking head, if you believe Africa deserves full ownership of her gold, say it loud in the comments. Africa can do it. And don't just watch. Subscribe now, because they won't teach you this in school. They buried this truth. It's time to dig it up. He was not born in a palace. He didn't wear silk or speak with a foreign tongue. He came from the dust of Faso, from the heart of a land long ignored. And yet, when Captain Ibrahim Traoré spoke, Africa listened. Born in 1988, raised in humble beginnings, Traoré grew up under the shadow of foreign flags waving over his homeland. He saw the gold leave. He saw his people hunger. And while others learned to look away, he looked deeper. Not at the riches, but at the robbery. He joined the military not for power but for clarity. In the ranks, he saw how decisions were made, how strings were pulled from Paris and Washington. And in 2022, at just 34 years old, he made a decision that would echo across a continent: take back control. There were no tanks in the street. No bloodshed. No palace coups. Just a bold, young soldier, rising with the will of the people and the fire of his ancestors. The world called it a military transition. The people called it liberation. Captain Ibrahim did not come to play games. He did not beg for loans or write polite letters to former colonizers. He walked into office and said what no one dared say out loud: our gold is ours. Our land is ours. Our future is ours. And then, he acted. In 2024, he nationalized the Bangu and Wanyone gold mines, two massive sites previously controlled by foreign firms. No debate. No delay. Just a stroke of the pen that ended decades of quiet looting. But that was just the beginning. He built Burkina Faso's first national gold refinery, capable of processing 150 tons per year. No longer would raw gold be shipped away and turned into wealth abroad. It would be refined, valued, and stored right here, at home. This is what revolution looks like: not slogans, but infrastructure. Not promises, but policies. But Captain Ibrahim didn't stop at machines and minerals. He built institutions. In 2025, he created SOPAMIB, the Société de Participation Minière du Burkina. Its job? To manage the nation's gold wealth and send profits to schools, hospitals, and roads. A pipeline of justice straight from the mines to the people. Still not satisfied, he turned to the forgotten heroes, the artisanal miners, those who dig with bare hands and hope. For them, he built the National Precious Substances Company to buy their gold fairly. In just 1 year, it bought over 20 tons, lifting thousands of families from poverty. These are not headlines, these are lifelines. And while the West panicked, Captain Ibrahim smiled. He wasn't afraid of losing their approval. He was too busy winning back Africa's dignity. But the world has noticed. And not everyone's happy. Rolled up newspaper: Captain Ibrahim latest news has flooded global feeds. The French government is rattled. Corporations are panicked. They fear him not because of violence but because of vision. Because a young African dared to dream and deliver. And now, leaders in Mali, Niger, Ghana, and even Zimbabwe are watching. Inspired. Preparing. The gold shutdown in Burkina Faso became a spark and now, a wildfire. This is no longer one man's rebellion. It's a movement. They called Sankara a dreamer. They called Lumumba dangerous. Now, they call Traoré a threat. But to the people he is a mirror. A reminder that Africa still births warriors. Still raises defenders. Still has sons and daughters who refuse to bow. So, what will history say? That he gambled? Or that he led? That he broke the system? Or that he rebuilt a nation? Speaking head, if you believe Ibrahim Traoré is the leader Africa has been waiting for, type New Africa in the comments. Subscribe now because this is more than news. This is history in the making. Paris didn't see it coming. For decades, Burkina Faso was a name whispered, not shouted, a place the West ignored, except when it came to gold. But now, in 2025, those same whisperings have become headlines, blaring across the globe. Burkina Faso latest news: France loses its golden grip. Let that sink in. A former colony, long treated as a resource pit, just stood up and broke the chains. And not with violence, not with slogans, but with decisions. Bold, unflinching decisions. It began with 2 tons of gold. On the surface, a seizure. In truth, a statement. When foreign companies, particularly French-backed, refused to pay new taxes, the government did the unthinkable: it halted their exports. No more gold for greed. No more quiet compliance. That gold, once destined for Paris vaults, was now locked in Faso's hands. And just like that, the old order cracked. Inside the Élysée Palace, alarm bells rang. President Emmanuel Macron, already struggling with unrest at home, was hit by the kind of blow that diplomacy can't sugarcoat: economic loss. Real, painful, immediate. France had counted on Burkina Faso's gold not just for jewelry and luxury, but to stabilize its own economy. In 2025, as gold prices skyrocketed past $2,400 an ounce, losing access meant losing power. Reports from Paris revealed emergency meetings. Economic advisors scrambled. Foreign policy teams panicked. Because this wasn't just about one mine. This was a model, a contagion of courage that could spread across Africa. Macron's response? Frustration wrapped in arrogance. He accused African nations of ingratitude. Claimed they'd forgotten France's support. But what support? Military occupation? Unequal contracts? Centuries of wealth extraction? Captain Ibrahim answered not with speeches but with facts. He reminded the world that France's riches were built on African backs. That true friendship doesn't come with chains. And the world listened. From Niger to Mali, from Ghana to Zimbabwe, leaders are watching. Macron's France is not just losing gold, it's losing influence. And no PR campaign can stop that. This is bigger than politics. This is the collapse of Francoafrique, the shadow empire France built after colonial flags came down. Through banks, business deals, and military support, France stayed rich while Africa stayed poor. But that script is burning. Burkina Faso has lit the match. And Macron knows it. If he retaliates with sanctions or interference, it will only deepen anti-French sentiment already boiling in West Africa. The truth? France has 2 choices: respect Africa, or be rejected by it. And don't think this is just about Burkina Faso. The United States is watching too. On May 28, 2025, General Michael Langley warned that Burkina Faso's gold policy could destabilize the region. What they mean is it destabilizes the system of control they've grown used to. Traoré isn't just changing gold policy. He's rewriting the rules of African sovereignty. And that terrifies them. Burkina Faso's gold is now building schools, not skyscrapers in Europe. It's funding hospitals, not hedge funds. It's turning villages into towns, not enriching oligarchs. This is what true independence looks like. Not flag waving but wealth keeping. So ask yourself, why does the West panic when Africa chooses itself? Why do headlines scream risk and instability the moment a nation decides to feed its people before its colonizers? Because they know the truth: if Burkina Faso succeeds, others will follow. If Traoré wins, Francofrique ends. And if the gold stays home, so does Africa's power. Speaking head, if you believe Africa has the right to stand tall, drop a comment below. Africa rise. Subscribe right now, because this isn't just news. This is revolution. And it's only just begun. They called him too young, too bold, too dangerous. But now, the world is calling him something else: unstoppable. Captain Ibrahim Traoré, once a soldier in the dusty ranks of Burkina Faso's army, is now a name echoing from Accra to Addis Ababa, from Harlem to Haiti. Not for his weapons, not for his title, but for his courage. At just 34 years old, he took the reins of a country bruised by poverty, corruption, and foreign control. And instead of bowing, he broke the chains. The latest news on Captain Ibrahim is not just about policies or gold bars. It's about power reclaimed. It's about a man who looked at the old system, the system that told Africa to sit quietly, sell cheap, obey orders, and said, no more. In 2025, Traoré didn't just halt French mining operations. He built a national gold reserve, a powerful symbol that Burkina Faso would no longer store its future in foreign banks. He unveiled a 150-ton gold refinery, a gleaming machine of independence. And when foreign firms refused to pay fair taxes, he took their mines back. But perhaps his boldest move was not economic. It was ideological. He told his people, our gold belongs to us. Our land belongs to us. Our destiny belongs to us. And something happened. The old men nodded. The youth stood taller. The mothers wept, not in grief, but in recognition. Because for the first time in decades, the leader wasn't a puppet. He was a mirror of their hopes, their anger, their pride. Traoré's rise was not just a change of face. It was a change of faith. Faith that Africa could walk alone. That we no longer needed permission to thrive. Under his leadership, Burkina Faso partnered with Russia and China not as beggars, but as equals. No colonial legacy. No hidden clauses. Just roads built, power plants offered, and machines delivered to dig gold the African way for African people. On June 11, 2025, a Russian firm signed a major deal. 2 weeks before, China offered a $1 billion plan to light up the country. The West called it dangerous. The people called it liberation. And they're not alone. Across the Sahel, a new generation is watching. In Mali, Niger, and beyond, leaders are echoing Traoré's ideas. Forming the Alliance of Sahel States, they're pooling power, knowledge, and courage. Young Africans on TikTok, in WhatsApp groups, in university halls, are sharing his speeches like scripture. He speaks for us, they say. He fights for what was stolen. And that's the truth. Ibrahim Traoré is not perfect. But he is present. Present in the minds, the streets, the hearts of the people. Not hiding behind diplomats standing beside miners, teachers, children. This is more than leadership. It is legacy building. They tried to dismiss him. Now they fear him. Because of free thinking, gold-holding Africa is the West's worst nightmare. So if you've heard the latest news about Captain Ibrahim, believe this, it's just the beginning. Speaking head, if you see him as a symbol of Africa's rebirth, write it loud in the comments. New Africa, subscribe now, because the next chapter is one they never wanted written. At first, they laughed. Then they watched. Now they copy. The world is not just noticing Burkina Faso. It's studying it. Imitating it. Fearing it. Because when one small nation says no more, it creates a tsunami of rebellion. What began as Traoré's gamble has become Africa's blueprint. In Mali, Colonel Assimi Goïta stood before his people and declared, "Burkina Faso showed us the way." His government immediately began tightening control over its own gold mines, announcing sweeping reforms on May 19, 2025. Niger followed next. On June 5, it launched audits of its uranium fields and gold contracts inspired by Faso's bold stand. What once was a whisper across the desert is now a chorus across the Sahel. Ghana, Zimbabwe, and even South Africa have begun rethinking their resource strategies. No longer are minerals just export goods, they are tools of sovereignty. In South America, indigenous leaders in Bolivia invoked the Burkina model in protests against foreign lithium contracts. In Asia, Vietnam and Laos sent delegations to study gold reserve models. The impact? Global. Immediate. Irreversible. Because what Burkina Faso did, what Captain Ibrahim ignited, was pull the curtain on how the world truly works. For decades, Africa was told it couldn't. That it shouldn't. That it must ask, wait, accept. But Traoré proved otherwise. And now, even the United States is reacting. On May 28, 2025, General Michael Langley from AFRICOM issued a warning: Burkina Faso's gold policy could destabilize the region. But who is really afraid of destabilization? The people, who finally eat and work with dignity? Or the powers that profited from their silence? France, cornered and bitter, is watching Francofrique unravel. The old guard is panicking as contracts fall, influence wanes, and partners vanish. Because this is no longer just economics. This is a shift in the global center of gravity. For too long, power flowed one way from the global south to the global north. Resources went up. Poverty stayed down. But now, gold is staying home. So are profits. And pride. In June 2025, Burkina Faso joined hands with Mali and Niger to form the Alliance of Sahel States. Not a defense pact. A defiance pact. They vowed to share knowledge, coordinate policies, and build a future beyond Western oversight. This alliance is a message: Africa is not just waking up. Africa is organizing. This is no longer about one country. It's about an entire continent choosing to breathe free, walk tall, and keep its riches in its soil. Gold is no longer a colonial memory. It is the currency of a new order. And the West? It must now decide: cooperate, or collapse. Respect, or be rejected. Burkina Faso's refinery, its new company Sopamib, and its national gold reserve are not just economic tools, they are symbols of liberation. When your children ask what changed Africa, tell them, it started with a gold bar in Burkina Faso. Speaking head, if you believe Africa's time has come, leave a comment: Africa can do it. Subscribe, because this movement isn't local. It's global. And history is being written in real time. The mines are nationalist. The gold is purified on African soil. The contracts are rewritten. But the journey is far from over. Captain Ibrahim's latest news is not the end of the story. It is the spark that lit a wildfire across a continent. Because for every school that gold builds in Burkina Faso, 100 more are needed across Africa. For every road paved, there are villages still isolated. For every policy rewritten, there are decades of damage to undo. Traoré's dream is not just national control. It's continental dignity. A future where children are taught their true history, not the colonial version. Where African nations no longer trade resources for crumbs, but for power, ownership, and pride. But beware, this new world has enemies. France is recalculating. The US is watching nervously. Multinational corporations are already plotting their return. If Africa falters now, they will swoop back in with suits and sanctions, smiling while taking everything back. That is why we cannot stop. Not now. Not ever. This isn't just a Burkina Faso story. This is a black story. A story of resistance, resurrection, and redefinition. From Harlem's jazz clubs to Lagos's tech hubs, the message is the same: Africa is rising. And with every bar of gold poured in Ouagadougou, with every child lifted out of poverty, we are writing a new chapter. So now it's your turn. Speaking head, if the story moved something in your chest, don't scroll past. Type "It's time for Africa" in the comments. Let the world see we are many. Like, share, speak, subscribe, because they hid our history long enough. Let's speak our future out loud. Thank you for being here. We'll see you in the next story, the kind they still don't want you to hear.